2023. This meeting is being held as required by the provisions of Chapter 131, Section 40 of the General Laws of the Commonwealth and Act relative to the protection of the wetlands, as most recently amended. Notice of the time and place of this meeting was posted in the town clerk's office. Persons wishing to be heard will be called in the following order. As you can just tell from my communications with Eric back there, this is being taped or broadcast live, or both. You'll watch yourselves on YouTube later. So the first, minutes for approval, and I know we're still waiting because we've got someone who's been given too much work and not enough time to do it, though.
I don't know when you're gonna have minutes, Bob. I know you're leaving, but I can't even get to it.
I understand. That's a situation that the town can fix. Meeting mail.
So I do have some mail.
Okay.
So I did hear from the Emma Wick from the Cranberry Association, and they're offering their assistance at Lake Street. And they've also spoken to the folks at the UMass Cranberry Research Station, and they're happy to get involved as well. So that's the report on that. And when we get to it on the agenda, I'll tell you about my conversations with New Bedford.
Okay.
That's the mail on that. And then we have some mail on next sample on Cushing Lane and Woodbridge, 1052 Main Street. Anthony Kudo did, in fact, file the no trespass orders. They've been served and everything's in effect, so we won't even be able to do any site visits there without him giving us permission to go on his private property to access the site. But I know he's not gonna let Nexamp on the property, so I don't know how we're gonna go on a site visit with Nexamp if they're prohibited. But I'll work that out in the next 2 weeks. But it's official.
Okay.
There's even an email in there from Nexamp saying that they realize he owns the land from a year ago.
Mr. Legere, that sounds like you have mail for us too?
I did, Chairman Roach, if I may.
Yes, please.
Thank you. I'll be very brief, I think. Luke Legere, McGregor, Legere, and Stevens on behalf of PJ Keating Company. We'd submitted a letter to the commission dated June 29th related to an issue that Mr. Hill had been here to speak to you about a couple months back at a May meeting. Relative to a building permit for Quonset hut on the property and a question of whether a stormwater management permit would be required for that or not. I just wanted to close the loop on that. I understand that Mr. Hannon spoke to Mr. Hill just before the meeting started this evening, and that Mr. Hannon has acknowledged that he's going to go ahead and sign off on that building permit application. That's really what we were requesting in the letter, was that the commission vote to direct Mr. Hannon to do so. So I believe that with Mr. Hannon's commitment to do that, there's really nothing left for us to ask. I just wanted to sort of close the loop on that for you.
That was that wrap shed we're talking about?
The wrap sheds, yeah.
Yes.
And I'd like to explain that. So, after talking to the building commissioner, Andy Babola, and going through the plans with him, we were going back and forth on whether or not it was actually going on an impervious surface. Dave Fredette, the engineer for 2 projects on Mattapoisett Road, came in, and there was a Dave Fredette that had stamped some plans for Keating. I said, are you the same Dave Fredette? Oh, yeah. And he told me about all his involvement there. He said, no, it's going in the front of the parking lot by South Main Street, and it is going on asphalt. So I talked to Andy about it, and I talked to Chairman Gaspar about it, and as long as it's going on existing asphalt, there's no need for stormwater permit. So I'm willing to write that letter, and we're good. It just takes a while for it to percolate through the building and the letter get out, because this was decided probably last Thursday.
Okay. Yeah, so we hadn't heard, so I was here just to try to address that, but again, it seems like we're all set, so.
So I'll make a motion to forego peer review.
This isn't on the agenda? This is not on the agenda tonight. He's just in here giving an update on that. Wait till we get there.
If I may, Mr. Roach, I do think Mr. Resendez's motion is relevant, where the commission had voted to retain a peer review consultant for this.
Not on the agenda.
We would ask that you just waive that requirement.
If there's a vote on this tonight, I will file an open meeting violation complaint. This is not on the agenda. We need to do it right, Commissioner Resendez,
Okay.
not just blurt things out at the table.
Well, thanks for the update.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Just delay another 2 weeks, I guess.
It doesn't delay them. They're getting a letter saying that they don't need a permit.
He needs a vote from the commission, doesn't he?
No, he doesn't.
Why not?
Not required. Permanent.
New information came to light.
The stormwater is not required.
Thought it said that.
There we go. On to old business, I need a motion to reopen a public hearing, please.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Continued public hearing, NOI, Sincarfa Park Drive, LLC, Lambert Street, map 17, lot 13, file number is SE001-0582. Notice of intent was filed by Sincarfa Park Drive, LLC, for property located at Lambert Street, map 17, lot 13. The applicant proposes development of an access road with proposed wetland impact and associated replication to access the Park Drive solar project. This is an alternative access road. The applicant is represented by Robert Bukowski of Weston and Sampson Engineers. My name is proposed Lambert Street Access Road site plans dated May 9th of 2023. I see Rob is back there. Mr. Bukowski, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Rob Bukowski, Weston Sampson, representing Sincarfa. So, thought I'd give a little bit of history here. So, as Chairman mentioned, there was a previously approved NOI about a year and a half ago with access further down Park Drive. I know this is hard to see. Let me know if you want me to bring it closer. But the original proposed access was up this road about midway down Park Drive and came up, and then the other access roads are to connect to the three different array areas. This one to the west, the one to the south, and one to the north. This in the middle here is the Eversource easement that goes through. The interconnection for the project is proposed within this easement here. So they had some issues with access through this. So looking at alternatives, we explored other options. We had conversations with Eversource. Accessing through their right-of-way or their easement was not allowed. So the next best thing seemed to be Lambert Street. So this is an existing public road. The pavement ends where actually it's probably better if I switch over to this one now. So the pavement ends here, and the proposal is to just extend this access road up and into that western array area. So the limit of work and everything with the previously approved solar array is going to remain the same. It's really just moving that access road further to west and onto Lambert Street. So it's currently a 30-foot paved, 30-foot wide paved way. There's going to be a 20-foot, the proposal is for a 20-foot long and 30-foot wide asphalt apron at the end of that. And for the person that lives at 80 Lambert Street, he's got a gravel drive that goes into a structure here, so he'll be able to come out of his gravel drive and onto asphalt. Then we've got, at the request of the planning board, the typical construction exit length is 50 feet. They requested that we extend it, so we're proposing 100 feet here. And then the gravel road starts. There is an area in the middle where we'll have to go over the wetland area. What we're proposing here is what we call a rock sandwich. So we'll use larger diameter stone basically to build up the road, and then put basically the wearing course of gravel on top of that. That'll allow the water from either side of the wetland to be able to pass through, and then back to gravel here. What we're proposing is a 1.5 to 1 replication, so the replication area will be 1.5 times the actual area of disturbance. This plan set that you've seen shows the proposed replication, the area of it, and a couple other details.
Can you tell them about Heritage?
Oh, yes, thank you. So yeah, when we submitted this, as you know, the part of the Wetland Protection Act form, the WPA form, is if it's in a priority habitat area, you have to send it to Natural Heritage. So we did that when we submitted the NOI to the town. I have a letter here. I don't know if you have a copy.
They don't have it, Jimmy. It's in your book.
Thank you, bud. So we had actually reached out to Heritage and discussed this with them before, because when the project was first approved, this area was not mapped as priority habitat. Since then, they've updated their mapping, so that area is now mapped as habitat for the eastern box turtle. We did discuss the project with them, and then their determination in this letter, which you can read on the second page, says, the division has determined that this project, as currently proposed, will not adversely affect the actual resource area habitat of state protected rare wildlife species. Therefore, it is our opinion that this project meets the state listed species performance standard for the issuance of an order of conditions. The only condition that they put on here is that we develop a turtle protection plan prior to construction. And that's something that we'd be happy to provide to the town for review as well.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Pat?
can I tell the commission about my discussion this morning with Rob about the Heritage
Sure.
approval? So I've been involved in 3 projects that had turtle protection plans and turtle sweeps and exclusions and all of those things. And as I talked to Rob this morning, the job's only as good as the person who does it. And I've seen it fail twice and seen it work once. So I did talk to Rob about maybe being able to put some conditions on this of a third party to go out and do the turtle sweeps or witness the turtle sweeps by the contractor. Rob brought up a company that he has faith in. Same company, I know the company, in fact, they did work for my son.
What's their name?
LEC?
Oh, let's see.
Out of-
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So that's all something doable, but I'd like to participate in any of the reviews and get copies on what's submitted for the turtle plan, and if there's any Zoom meetings that the town gets to attend. But we can put that into conditions when we vote the NOI.
Yeah, no, we're happy to submit work with the town.
Yeah. And because Natural Heritage signed off already, it really supersedes the need for the peer review of the habitat that we voted for. And I'm going to recommend in the conditions part of this that some CARFA deposit some money, maybe for some future peer review, in case we have questions on the Army Corps, any of these other MIPA, any of these other things you're going to go through. Just have a dollar amount not to exceed, and then if we want to use it, we can use it. If we don't use it, it goes back to some CARFA.
You mean for town review of those
Yeah,
applications?
if the commission votes your NOI and doesn't put anything in there about peer review, we're locked out of peer review. And if you get to the Army Corps, or you get further on down the road, the turtle plan, and some questions come up, and it's something that I've seen as a problem, I'd like to get a third-party opinion just to say that you're right. So I'd rather just establish there'd be some money available for that. And it'd be in the conditions, but I'm just explaining to the commission that we really don't need to, we'd be wasting the money on Mike Toohill to do a wildlife review after Natural Heritage already said it's not going to be a take.
Going back to the other point just now about peer review, possibly in the future, for which aspect of the project?
Why don't you tell them the rest of the permits you need to get?
Yeah, so we've had discussions with DEP as well. So we're going to need to get a 401 water quality certification. So we'll be working towards that in the future. And we've also got a meeting set up with MIPA. So we're still trying to work through what exactly we need to submit to MIPA, but those are the 2 big ones. And then potentially Army Corps as well for the wetland disturbance. But the big one that we're going to be tackling first is the 401 water quality cert. So like I said, we've had initial discussions with the Southeast region and the circuit rider, and we'll be, this really is step 1 of this, alternate access. We've now got to go through DEP and MIPA. So once we hopefully get approval here, we can start advancing those discussions more and pulling in additional information, additional plans, additional information that they may need to review it.
So if Army Corps were to get involved, why would that be? Does it have to do with the right-of-way, or is there another reason?
Just with the actual wetland disturbance, the resource area disturbance.
And we do have a new section chief in wetlands in Zero. Dan retired, so who knows how that new person looks at things.
Right.
But they've got a significant road ahead of them that's going to could take some time.
Mhm.
They've got some environmental justice issues to address, MIPA, and if it turns into a environmental impact report and corrective actions and all those other things, it just goes on and on and on. And I told Rob this morning that, you know, we received a letter from Natural Heritage relative to that other site saying the commission shouldn't have voted on the notice of intent until everything was all set at Natural Heritage. They would like to get a vote on their notice of intent, and I understand why we had that discussion as well.
Mhm.
Is to go to all these other agencies, it would benefit them to be able to say that they have an approval from conservation. But the conservation approval should be conditioned. And I'm going to ask you to close the public hearing tonight, but not vote on it tonight. And give me until the next meeting to review the natural heritage stuff and come up with some conditions that will be protective going forward in this.
And if we do that, then we'd be advertising a new public hearing?
Nope,
No.
Nope.
Yeah, right.
no, we'd be closing the
Yeah.
public hearing tonight. Public hearing would be closed, and then we have 21 days under the Wetlands Protection Act to deliberate. But our next meeting is in 14 days, so we would beat that 21 days by doing it in 14 days. And to vote a notice of intent tonight and issue a standard order of conditions would be wrong. And you just can't sit here and think of all of the things that you want to do on the fly. Because I guarantee you tomorrow you'll say, oh, you know, we should have done that. This is a big project.
Mhm.
They can certainly wait the 14 days for the deliberation and vote and special conditions, and I don't think Rob was terribly heartbroken about that. We talked about that.
Could we request to see the list of conditions once you have them drafted up prior to the meeting?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'd be willing to talk to you.
Okay.
I don't vote.
Right.
I'd just be telling you why I'm asking and what I'm going to tell the commission.
Mhm.
But, yeah.
That's fine.
And I'm trying to think of another example when we close the hearing without a vote on anything, other than a close the hearing.
Because that's the way you did it. But the Wetlands Protection Act,
No, but that's what you're suggesting tonight.
I'm suggesting that the Wetlands Protection Act says that upon receiving a complete application of a notice of intent, we have 21 days to take action. And if we can't reach that in 21 days, we need to ask for continuances for more information like we've been doing. Now, after we close the hearing, we have 21 days to deliberate and issue a final decision. I'm telling you that we meet again in 2 weeks, that would be 14 days.
Right.
And that gives us time to come up with a sensible order of conditions with special conditions and vote on it. And we've met the 21-day deadline.
I'm just not accustomed to closing a hearing without, you just voting to close a hearing. with
I know, but-
Nothing.
Think about this, information comes out at a hearing, and sometimes you hear new information, and it really doesn't percolate. And you vote on it, you close the hearing, you say standard order conditions.
Mhm.
And then you drive it home, you say, wait a minute, we didn't say they couldn't put snow in the buffer zone. Oh, wait a minute, we didn't say they couldn't use herbicides and pesticides. We didn't.
Following you there.
So that's why you have time to deliberate and vote. And a lot of commissions do that. Very rarely do they vote that night on a large project.
Okay.
So,
Before we move on, anybody here with questions?
Are we closing or continuing?
we would close the public hearing.
Close.
We've gotten all the information we need.
I'd like to have more time to review the magnitude of this project, personally. I mean, I've just, been exposed to it, and
Mhm.
I think I'd like to dive into the drawings a little more and see exactly what it entails before I vote on it. Any notice of intent, yeah, personally.
So today, I prepared books for the 3 new commissioners
Mhm.
with stormwater bylaw, stormwater regulation, 2 sections of the Wetlands Protection Act, 310 CMR 10.4 and 10.5 that we use the most,
Right.
and the stormwater handbook. So they have all that information, they have correspondence in their books, and they would have some time to read up about this and try and tie in what they saw on Saturday at the site visit. This would be like drinking information from a fire hose. So,
So Christian, when you say that, are you saying you want to know more about more than just that driveway part of it?
Yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I'd just like to have some time to review.
I know
a
in
little
this case,
further.
it's just
Because-
this part of it, but let me
Correct.
clarify with Pat and Rob here. The part that's being brought to us tonight is just this
It's
part.
only Lambert Street. And the only reason he had to tell you about the rest is so that you could vote
Oh,
on
I-
this project. But the only thing under consideration
I
is
see.
Lambert Street. But there's still conditions that go with that, and I would just like to make sure that we get it right.
And I should check with anybody
If
in the
anyone
chairs
has-
out there, if anybody has questions on this. Mhm.
I'm just telling you yesterday.
All right, anybody else here with, I know you want to give us accusing?
So Bob, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing for Safer Park Drive Solar Array Project and set the date to deliberate and vote the next scheduled meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion? And in that time, though, so for further information, deliberations, more information from all of them.
We're closing the public hearing.
Right.
There'll be no more information other than to do with the semantics of natural heritage and working out those final things. Things out of our purview.
So who's preparing the conditions? We or they?
We are, yes. And I'll have all the conditions to you folks a week before the meeting. Everybody will have time to look at it. And I think that the public will be happy that it got vetted.
You have, give him ample time as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
So we got a motion and a second.
we do. And we're done with deliberation. Those in favor? Those opposed? Those abstaining? Hmm?
I can't vote.
This one?
No, you can vote on this one. You can vote on this one.
So, that's in favor then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion, hearing closed. Need a motion to reopen a public hearing?
Motion.
In a second?
Aye.
A continued public hearing, NOI, New Bedford Reservoir, Lakes 1, 2, 3, and 4, map 4, lot 49, and map 19, lot 32. The file number is SE001-0583. Notice of intent was filed by Jamie Kelly, Town of Acushnet, for property located at New Bedford Reservoir, Lakes 1, 2, 3, and 4. The applicant proposes to control nuisance and invasive plant growth utilizing regular monitoring and registered aquatic herbicides. The applicant is represented by Andrew Felter of Solitude Lake Management. Plan name is New Bedford Reservoir, dated April 5, 2023. Is there anybody here for this project from Solitude?
So there's been no contact from Solitude. Only contact from people on our side. So I did hear from Chance Perk, the agent for New Bedford. He was very happy that the commission, took this serious and did a great job at the last meeting. They're in favor of the project, but they want to make sure it's done properly. He's willing to participate and go to some of the meetings with the cranberry growers and things of that nature. And I think that at some point, we're going to have to circle back on getting a professional to give us advice on this. We can't just take the word of Solitude. And one of the comments from Chance was just, how unprepared Solitude was for the meeting. That fella didn't take one note. And he just kind of said, kind of, maybe, shoulda, coulda, woulda, and those aren't the answers we need for that. But Joe Correa from the Board of Health called me last Friday afternoon and brought up a good point, that this project has been described as treating ponds, as though they're impounded, and they're not. This is a river, and that river flows over a dam, and there's a flow there, and I don't see anywhere in their application or any of their text where they address the effects of these treatments going downstream and how that addresses it. And I think that, and you would know this best, Bob, if that's something that the coalition wants to know about, or, Save the Bay, or whoever, because we're heading for their sawmill. This is all heading downstream. And it doesn't affect just the Cranberry Road, there may be other people. So, I'd like some time, he should be here, because he has to agree to continue this. If they don't agree to continue this could get a constructive approval in 21 days.
The young gentleman was sitting here.
Tonight?
That was representing that in the presentation. Yeah,
Tonight?
he was just sitting there, I don't know where he went.
What?
Yes.
Are you sure?
I didn't see him.
Yeah.
He
No,
was sitting, he might have been here with Weston Sampson.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, it didn't look like Andrew.
Yeah.
No, it's not. Do you want to repeat what you said about the mail you got from, was her name Emma, Sarah, somebody from?
Emma Wick,
Emma Wick. Just so,
From
in
the-
case they didn't hear it.
from the Cranberry Growers Organization. They're not Ocean Spray, but they work with the UMass Cranberry Research Station. And they're very interested, and their executive director was on vacation but was in contact with them, and he may have other questions on the matter as well. So this is kind of elevated and getting a lot of look. But we got a procedural problem with him not being here.
Well, any of the abutters have any questions, comments right now? I know you've made the effort to come here. If you, yeah, Mr. Really good.
My hearing's not what it used to be. Where does it stand?
For the record, again, Walt, we know who you are, but for the record, tell us who you are.
Walt Braille, 1189 Main Street. So where does this thing stand right now?
So we stand that we gave that young man a lot of questions. And
Yeah.
we expected to hear some answers back from him. It's been 2 weeks and we haven't heard anything. There's been no contact. And my take on this is that this is something that's always assumed it's just gonna be done. And when they did it in our town, it went through conservation like grass through a goose. Everyone think there's no alternatives, just let them go ahead and do it. But this has a lot of more things attached to it with you folks having
more
cranberry bogs
complicated,
and
yes.
peach orchards and all these things. And the fact that I truly believe that the weeds need to be collected. They need to be harvested, or it's just gonna do more damage to the pond. And New Bedford agrees with that as well. He's supposed to be here, and the only way to handle it is to make a negative determination. Unless you want to run the risk of a constructive approval
By making a motion to continue.
by making a motion to continue for more information that they didn't agree to. That's why I always say for more information, because they have to agree to it.
Mhm.
And after putting the books together for these folks, there's actually an affidavit they're supposed to sign at the meeting that says they agreed to it, to supply more information. So,
Can we hold this till the end of the meeting? Allow them.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
somebody can make a motion
Any
to hold it.
any objection from anybody in the board? Yeah, so make a motion.
Yeah, I'll motion to hold.
continue to
yeah,
later in the
hold
agenda.
to the, toward the end of the
Do we
meeting.
have a second on this?
Just as a courtesy.
Yeah.
Second.
Yeah. Okay, in favor?
Yeah.
So, you're welcome to stick around, we'll come back to it, maybe.
Maybe.
All right,
Yeah.
but
We have a
Thank you.
short, we have a short
there'll be
agenda.
some vote on it tonight. Okay, motion,
They wouldn't be able to approve it tonight.
No.
That's for sure.
right. There'll be some
But
sort
there
of
may be a motion.
a vote on the motion, right? So I need a motion to reopen a public hearing. In a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, continue public hearing, stormwater, Jose Costello, Park Drive and Deep Brook Drive, map 17, lot 66 through 84, map 18, lots 12R, 12S, 18, 18G. Stormwater permit application has been filed by Jose Costello, the property located at Park Drive and Deep Brook Drive, map 17, lots 66 through 84, map 18, lots 12R, 12S, 18, 18G, Acushnet, Mass. The applicant proposes to construct approximately 2,350 feet of roadway with associated drainage and utility systems to serve a 15-lot residential subdivision The applicant is represented by Jamie Bissonette of Zenith Consulting Engineers LLC, all the clients Randy Gagnon. Plan name is Eastbrook Estates, dated October 24 of 2017. Final peer review report and request for variance from stormwater requirements.
You guys all had the final report from Beals and Thomas. It's in your book, Jimmy?
Yep.
The final peer review from Beals and Thomas is in your book.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Rainey Gagnon, Zenith Consulting Engineers, representing the applicant, Jose Casella. So, for the benefit of our new commission members, I'm going to just go over a brief history of the project, talk about the project, what's entailed with it, and then kind of give a summary of where we're at and what we're asking of the commission. So, as mentioned, the project is a 15-lot residential subdivision located off Park Drive. The project proposes to extend Park Drive by about 850 feet, and then also construct Deep Brook Drive heading north, which is a 1,500-foot roadway that crosses Deep Brook and also crosses a wetland area here. There are existing culverts in these two locations that were constructed in the 90s, and they received all of their permits and order of conditions and water quality certificates, I believe in 1993. So these have been there since then. This project has gone through several iterations over decades, essentially, and it's changed a multitude of times. But this is the project, this is the version of the project that was approved in 2017. Plans were done by GAF Engineering originally. They were submitted in May of 2017. They were reviewed for planning board for definitive subdivision in the fall of 2017, and they were approved and endorsed in December of 2017. Running concurrently, one of the things that the planning board wanted was for the commission to also review the project and obtain their order of conditions, which they did in October of 2017. Once that was acquired, the planning board then signed off. Again, the plans are not by Zenith, and I'll get into why we're here a little bit later. But so the order of conditions was issued, and the planning board approved the plans in late 2017. The order of conditions was extended in 2020. It's important to note that the project was peer reviewed by a peer engineer for the planning board through their process by field engineering, and they went back and forth a couple of times with GAF and ironed out some of the issues that they saw with the project, and they signed off on the project as well. Field engineering did.
Rainey?
Yes.
That was peer review for the prior owner?
For the prior owner, correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
You
So
care about that?
the original applicant was, I don't know the entity, but it was Costco, James and John and Michael Costco.
Yeah.
Sorry, thanks, I appreciate that, thank you. So they were the original applicant. And it's our understanding that the planning board was also the stormwater review board at that time. Now, it's come to our attention, obviously now, which is why we're here, that stormwater permit was never applied for or granted. Even though the other permits were applied for, they were reviewed, they were approved. So, like I said, the project is a 15-lot subdivision. I'm going to go over a little bit more in detail of that. So you can see here, this is the end of Park Drive to the west of the project. And again, we're going to extend the Park Drive by 850 feet and also construct a new roadway, Deep Brook Drive, 1,500 feet to the north. find my sheet that has the drainage, so we can kind of talk about that a little bit. Just a few other side notes. The project is going to be served by town water with private on-site septic systems. For the stormwater design of the project, GAF designed 3 detention basins. The first is going to be located right at the end of Park Drive. These were designed originally to be wet detention basins, meaning they contain a permanent pool. But through the review process and with comments from Board of Health, the wet detention basin portion, the permanent pool portion was removed from the design. So these are essentially dry detention basins that are designed to flow and drain completely after a storm. So the first one is here off the end of Park Drive. The other 2 are located to the north off of Deep Brook Drive. If I can find the sheet. Just for context, this is, north is to the right on this page. So we're going up Deep Brook Drive, Park Drive, with that other basin is, it would be on the left side of this page. So we have 2 other detention basins. Again, these are designed to be dry detention basins that are designed to completely drain with no standing water in them. So I think that's about all I wanted to give for the original design. So where does that bring us today? Obviously, Mr. Costello obtained the project in 2022. When he wanted to begin construction, he was notified that he didn't have his stormwater permit. On that same note, GAF Engineering, who's the original designer of this project, is no longer involved in the project. So Mr. Costello brought us on to essentially help him obtain his permit using GAF design. And I think any engineer, I don't know if any engineers here, it's pretty irregular that an engineering firm would take someone else's plan and try to present it. So it's rather irregular. So essentially, Mr. Costello hired us to prepare the application, present the plans, and then whatever came of it, this is where we are now. The application was submitted in November 2022, and the first review took place by Beals and Thomas, I think in February 23. And I think we had 2 or 3 iterations of back and forth with comments and responses and that sort of thing. And I think, judging by the report we were given yesterday, that there are essentially 2 remaining items. One of them is just a clerical thing where we have to, I'll get into this in a moment, that we did make some minor modifications to the design in the process of going back and forth with Beals and Thomas. And one of those things was converting one of those basins into an infiltration basin so that we could better meet that 10-year volume requirement. And I'll get into that as well a little bit, a little later on. But the 2 remaining items, one is providing O&M information, operation and maintenance information. We had provided an O&M document for the revised design, but we forgot to add what the schedule would be for an infiltration basin. Again, it's just a clerical thing. I actually have a copy of the revised with that information added.
And we're talking about item number 8, where it says B&T current response request that applicant update the O&M plan.
Correct.
Include AutoCAD.
Yes. And I have a copy of that. I did bring only one copy, but I mean, we can easily get that to you guys. And again, it's not a major issue. I think the one remaining major issue is this 10-year storm volume, runoff volume requirement. And that is what we're requesting the variance for from the town stormwater bylaw. outside of the 10-year the 10-year runoff volume requirement. It's our contention that this project, as it's currently constituted with our minor changes that we've made, does meet Mass DEP stormwater management standards. Again, other than providing that O&M information, which is, I think everyone would agree is a minor compared to that 10-year storm thing. So, so next I'd like to just get into the variance itself, and why we think that this project is at a detriment if it were required to meet that requirement. Based on our understanding, per the state regulations, to receive a municipal variance, we need to demonstrate a hardship based on one of 3 criteria, and that's lot shape, topography, and soil conditions. You need to present the hardship for one of those. And we argue that we contend that we could meet 2 of those, topography and soil conditions. The site is comprised completely of hydrologic soil groups C and D soils, which are the least receptive of stormwater rainfall. Meaning, when it rains, those soils, they don't accept much water into the ground. What they do is they essentially seal up and cause more runoff. And it's not conducive for recharge, which another word for recharge is volume control. Per Mass DEP requirements, the Mass DEP standards for stormwater management, sites that are comprised of solely C and D soils, which this project is, only need to meet that recharge requirement, runoff volume requirement, to the maximum extent practical. And that essentially means do the best you can, try to meet, the state and the, whatever municipal requirements it would be. So, so that would be our hardship under soil conditions would be. And I don't know if I have a soil map for this, but I can give a general idea of where the soils are located. Because this goes into the topography. They're sort of hand in hand. 2 of our 3 basin locations are located in D soils. The 3rd one, which is the basin at the end of Park Drive, is in a pocket of C soils. It's going to be a little rough, and I apologize, but there's sort of a pocket of sea soils here. There's another pocket like up through this area, and then there's another one like at the very top up here. Just for a reminder, we do have Basin 3, which is in the sea soils, and then Basin 1 and 2, which are in D soils. And again, the topography sort of lends itself, like the higher areas are here and up here, and the lower areas, which makes, it's self-evident almost, because that's where your wetlands and the stream and all of that are. So the majority of our better soils, with the exception of this one area, are on the higher elevations, which would be tough to implement with any design for this piece of property. So so before I get, I'm gonna pause it there, and I'm just gonna go over real quick some of the changes that we proposed in our dealings with Beals and Thomas, just to show you that some of the efforts that we have made to try to meet all of the conditions, not just the 10-year storm. So just a quick overview. We generated a sort of a concept but a concept that works. We wanted to make sure that it would be something that worked of the entire site, including the house lots, because there was some question as to whether the roof drain systems for each house, which are part of the stormwater management system for the entire project. Those actually, if you consider, 15 houses at say 2,000 square feet plus, I mean that's that's 3/4 of an acre roughly of impervious that's going straight into the ground. And we went through and we calculated based on, there was many soil test pits done back when the project was originally done. So we went through, we sized every system. We provided a topographic design we did, of each lot to show that we could fit the septic, the roof-based systems, the houses, and the grading. So one of the items that we had...
Mr. Gagnon?
Yes, sir.
Talking about the roof drain, so is there a dry well proposed for each lot?
Correct. So we're talking about a bed of plastic chambers surrounded by crushed stone. And each of these is designed to receive a 10-year storm from each roof. Regardless of how fast it drains, we did a static design, if you will. Meaning we're not assuming that this water is going into the ground. We're just assuming that when a 10-year storm hits, all the water from that roof is going into the system. And however long it takes to drain itself is how long it takes. But we know that it has that capacity. It has that volume. So that was one of the main things that we did. Secondly, I spoke earlier about how during the original design review, the permanent pool portion of each of these basins was removed. But essentially what happened, what that did was it actually pulled it out of compliance with Mass DEP regulations for water quality, meaning water treatment from your runoff from your roads. You're required to remove 80% of your total suspended solids. That style of basin it doesn't do that. You need that permanent pool because you have microbes, you have plant life that actually will remove pollutants. And when you remove that wet portion, it basically loses its efficiency to provide that water quality. So what we did was, and now remember, we're working from a spot where this was not our original design, and we don't want to unravel the entire thing because it would have to go back to all those other permits and have them redone. So we're trying to work with the design, make tweaks necessary to bring this into compliance with Mass DEP, while also trying to meet the town's regulations as best we can. So, first, to address the water quality, we were proposing to convert the last manhole before each basin to be converted into what they call a water quality. They call it a hydrodynamic separator unit. And what it does is there's baffles and other mechanisms inside these manholes that when water hits it, it's able to actually remove that 80% TSS. So we were proposing to convert, again, the last manhole before discharge to each of these basins into a water quality unit that would remove 80% TSS and bring it into compliance with the standard 4 of Mass DEP, which technically this project didn't, even though it got approved years ago, it didn't meet that particular requirement, which is it's an important one. And I think we did propose some minor changes to, like some berm heights, a 10th here or that sort of thing. I believe this basin 2 was intercepting groundwater, so we proposed to line that so that it's not going to get seepage from the groundwater and then discharge. We were trying to prevent that, so we're going to line that basin up to the seasonal high groundwater elevation so that it operates as intended and not pulling groundwater to the surface and then re-discharging it. And then the final change was to convert the design of Storm Basin 1 into an infiltration basin, again, to try to best meet the 10-year storm volume requirement. I could say just in general, the storm, the test pits, I mean, there was over 100 probably test pits done on this property. They all had high groundwater. They all, there were some decent perk tests, but again, we're talking up here where the houses are and those better soils are as well. Down here, we were at, I mean, I can look it up, but so here we were at like less than 2 feet, about 2 feet at this one, I believe. Yeah. And I think this one was even less. This one was probably less than 2 feet to the seasonal, to the seasonal high groundwater table. And that's important because when you have an infiltration BMP, like a stormwater basin, a roof drain infiltration, you have to maintain a certain separation to that seasonal high groundwater table. That way, you have sort of a dry section of soil that will receive that water. Because if the water table's there's nowhere for the water that's in it to go. So NASDP requires that you have a minimum of 2 feet of separation. So minimum of 2 feet of soil between the bottom of your system and the groundwater table. So I think that kind of covers most of the stormwater changes that we made. Again, without unraveling the whole design, but also trying to make sure that this thing is compliant with DEP standards and compliant with the town standards, except for the volume calc. I mean, sorry, the volume, the runoff volume for the 10-year storm.
Mind if I ask you a question?
Sure.
Those manholes you're talking about with the diffusers,
Yes.
all right. How often do them get cleaned out?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, but so we provided the manufacturer's standards on what would need to be done. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but we did provide that in our O&M.
Okay, just gonna ask that question.
Yeah.
So I have one. So it appears to me that there's this teeter-totter with the water penetration, the amount of water on this site. Have you guys considered maybe 2 less homes on this project and done a study this way?
To reduce the impervious areas?
So in our view, we haven't. Just to answer your question, no. But in our view, so one thing to note is that there are no state or federal regulations that require any construction project to reduce the volume of the runoff. The key has always been the runoff rate. One way to think of rate versus volume, if you would imagine a bathtub. The bathtub is your receiving water body, and it has water in it, and it has a drain, and it also has a faucet or a garden hose or something that's putting water in. The garden hose would be water coming from our site. Let's just say before anything is built. You turn on your garden hose, you put water in, water's also draining out. You could let that hose run and run and run for as long as you want, put as much water, as much volume as you want, but it's never going to overflow because the rate of the water doesn't change. Now, if we bring in a project, if we control that rate, again, the bathtub will never overflow because you're putting the same rate of water as it can drain, from its drain. Now, if you were to take, say, a fire hose, put a small amount of water, but at a very high rate, short rate of time, that tub is going to overflow. So even if it's a smaller volume, it's going to come in at a higher rate. That's why most of the regulations you see, it's the rate of runoff that is the key.
And nobody can predict the rate of volume of rainfall we're gonna get. As we all know this year, the rate of rain that we've received has been torrential downpours. I'm just thinking the overall roofing system for the amount of water for this site is concerning.
I understand. I did have a couple of other things I would like to.
Go ahead, Pat.
When he's done, can we hear from the building?
I was just going to ask.
Yeah, before the commission gets.
Building Thomas.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Chris.
Sure.
The retention pond 2, you say you're gonna line that?
Correct.
And what kind of material are you gonna use?
It is going to be PVC liner. It's almost a sandwich, if you will, with a filter fabric, a PVC liner, and another piece of filter fabric, and then 1 foot of soil to anchor that down. We actually did, we brought the bottom of the basin up, and we reran the calculations for that basin. So if the water table does rise, that soil is going to hold it,
Right.
hold that down.
But that'll still infiltrate the groundwater?
No, that basin doesn't infiltrate. It's only basin 1 that we're proposing to redesign as an infiltration basin. And what that essentially means is, rather than just have a grass, loam seed bottom, that's going to get excavated down and then refilled with sand
Right.
so
I
that
get
it
it.
promotes.
Yeah.
And that particular basin does have that separation I talked about earlier. It was the only one of the 3 that had the separation.
It's on the low,
from
the low area, right?
So,
Sure.
I was reading some Board of Health files this morning, and there was a decision in their reviews of this project that all of these basins have to be dry within 72 hours. Are you gonna accomplish that?
I can double check our calculations, but I think.
And then, we have a bylaw in town that requires a 4-foot separation from groundwater.
So the 4-foot separation to groundwater, I do have the regulation here. Let me, bear with me for 1 second. So usually the 4-foot separation is when you're the intent of the basin, say, is to control greater than the 10-year volume. But
But it's also to filter water to protect contamination from getting into the groundwater.
right, and
That's the
usually
reason for the 4 feet.
right. So the 4 feet is you usually require that extra 4 feet if you have high infiltration rate soils, which we do not have here.
I'm not talking about septic requirement.
No,
This is a soil board requirement
Okay.
to have a 4-foot separation from groundwater.
So, I mean, I guess I would contend that if we're not meeting that, then it's another reason for us to ask for the variance, because it's in order to meet those requirements, we would need to essentially redesign the entire project, and it would actually require much larger basins to meet that 72-hour drawdown. Because the only way to get the drawdown is to have a much larger square footage in the bottom, because you need more area to receive that water. So I believe we did rough calculations, and the basins would have to almost double in size, each one of them. And as you can see, this basin here is actually already constructed. And if it were to double in size, we would have to actually install, we have to move that one and then install a second one over here to intercept some area from Park Drive. Again, it would require a substantial redesign.
Which would include more tree clearing and more...
A lot more tree clearing.
Shoot, that sounds in the foot.
Yeah, makes no sense.
Well, again, it's impractical because Basin 3 is in the ground. Several of the structures are in the ground. The areas of Basin 2 are all cleared. And again, we'd be talking about almost doubling the areas for all of these. So I think that's about all I have as far as my presentation, but again, I'd be happy to entertain questions or bring in Mr. Cody.
We'll have Bill and Thomas.
Can I just make one comment about the basins already being constructed? The issue of the basins being undersized was brought up before the basins were completed. The contractor asked, do you want me to keep building the basins, or do you want to wait and see if they're redesigned and the state keep going? So just let's keep that in mind. But I'd love to hear from Beals and Tom.
Good evening. Also on behalf of, my name is Matt Cody, Beals and Thomas. We're the peer review engineer for this project dating back, as the applicant said, February. We've issued letters in February, a couple in May, and most recently on June 27th. The applicant gave an accurate presentation of where we stand. Where we had several questions about how things were modeling and how things were modeled and groundwater elevations, etc. We've worked through all those issues and they've been resolved to our satisfaction. We would note they are requesting a couple waivers for the commission's consideration when voting on this. One is to reduce the depth to some of the drainage pipes. I think we have a minimum of 36 inches. Some of the drainage pipes are 20. They're proposing 24. We don't necessarily take an exception to that, but again, just bringing it to your attention as you're voting. Another one is the basins require fences around them. I believe you have a pretty strict standard. It's about the style of fence. They're just proposing chain link. Again, we don't necessarily take, I think the intent of the fence is just to protect the basin and anybody entering it. But again, want to bring that to your attention.
So, yeah, we've had other basins that have had chain link fences. To me, that's not an issue. In terms of the storm drain, so you say storm drain depth of cover from 36, are you talking this way? Are we talking the width of the storm drain?
Above it. So the pipe should, I think the regulations call for the pipe to be at least 3 feet deep from the ground surface. So they're changing that 3 feet to 2 feet.
Mm-hmm.
In some locations, not necessarily globally, just in some locations.
Okay, and so your comment here was Beals and Thomas takes no exception to the waiver being requested.
We've seen with the technology now, and that was plastic pipes that they're proposing. The manufacturer certifies that they can be 2 feet deep and not be compromised in that way. And then we come kind of to the variance discussion. As the applicant mentions, the regulations from the Mass DEP side are all being met as far as rates and volumes, etc. But the town does have this 10-year volume issue that they're not meeting.
So we have a regulation that requires to meet the 10-year storm. Our in-town regulation.
I believe the Mass DEP has 10 standards. You folks actually have 11. That being the 11th standard. So that continues to not be met. Again, as we've kind of to the questions that were just asked, we've asked them, what can be done to get in compliance. The response is always to come back to just as they don't want to redesign everything, they don't want to start from scratch, they don't want to go back to zero. That we can understand that, but again, we just note to the board that they currently do not meet as proposed. So the the ruling on the variance obviously we defer to you and your comfort level with that.
And the difference between meeting it and not meeting it, which is a percentage of flow.
I don't know
what's the difference between
I have off the top of my
town
head.
standard and what's.
It's just under, that volume that we're talking about. Our increase is, I think it was 16 point, I have it written down, my notes.
I did see
17%.
16.7%, so yeah, if you round it up to 17.
17%, so not necessarily an insignificant number, but not a,
Mr. Chairman. So, talking to Matt a couple of times, as I said before at a prior meeting, I talked to some engineers that are on some of our boards, and their feeling is that a waiver for the 10-year storm was a bad idea.
It's not a waiver, it's a variance.
Excuse me, a variance with a V was a bad idea. And the reason for the 10-year storm requirement is to prevent downstream flooding. And I think that you had agreed with me on that.
I guess, well, it's, yeah, I mean, obviously, if they're not meeting that volume of water, I mean, but they are meeting the rates.
But it is to prevent downstream flooding. Yeah. And then you and I spoke about how they could meet this and whether or not the project submitted an alternatives analysis.
No, and that's kind of where we got to, like, yeah, can you, if you took away 2 lots, if you made the road a little shorter, if you made the road a little, narrower, just any steps you could take to reduce that impervious area, and then therefore the required volume, what could be done?
And the roof drain systems, they won't take away from that 17%?
They likely will, but it's hard, but the way they presented it, they're not included.
But they potentially could put it pre-construction, it could be probably less water, potentially. That's,
Yeah, I mean, I guess they would have to provide that analysis.
Right. And a 10-year storm event's what, 5 inches of water in a 24-hour period?
I don't think it's quite
More like.
It's probably
It's like
4.7
something.
4.3,
4.3,
not quite
4.4.
5.
And there's a 10% chance of that happening in a year.
Yeah,
Yeah, once every 10 years.
it would be once every 10 years. Yeah.
Okay.
Like 3+ inches in 12 hours.
But I guess that's all, I mean, we have, obviously, here available for questions, but
Yeah.
that's kind of where we stand.
It all came down to the 10-year storm. really.
And so I looked at, so so the first review from February 17, we saw that, and then May 8, and noticed a big difference in compliance and in responses to from May 8th. We never saw May 31st and didn't get June 27th until yesterday. So I'm going to just say this for anybody that's ever going to do a peer review for this town, because we've got a half-time agent and a half-time staff person, make sure that the chair always gets a copy of that report, as opposed to getting it with short notice. I mean, you wouldn't know that otherwise, but
We actually gave them a short amount of time to do that peer review to try and get to this meeting. But
sure.
Yeah.
But, yeah, not, my point is make sure
Yeah.
at least one of us gets to see it, so.
And-
If you get occupied with other things and you don't send it, then we've got it anyway.
Well, actually, if Jamie and Randy hadn't called the other day, I wouldn't have known that they didn't get it. So
Okay.
that got out to them. But it was all down to the one comment.
Mhm.
I think Beals and Thomas did a good job of keeping that recap going of what's resolved, what's
Yeah.
resolved, what's resolved, so that it
Yeah.
came down to the
It was
final
easy to
thing.
read, thank you.
But I'd make the same recommendation when you're done with public comment, that we close the public hearing and give these guys a chance for the next meeting to deliberate and vote.
I think we're good. Both times.
Oh, I'm curious if anybody else here has questions or comments for either Mr. Cody, Mr. Gagnon. And, I mean, yeah, I have that right to ask him, but okay.
I'll make a motion to, to issue the variance and issue the stormwater permit.
Motion on the table, do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? I think you said because of Mullen Rule, no vote?
She can't vote. She can't
Okay. So we have a motion, we have a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Aye. Those abstaining? That's 4-2. We are allowed to issue variances, it happens with ZBA.
You got it.
Sure. And I understand your point, Pat, about doing it for others, but I don't know that we're ever going to see another project like this in town.
You just set a precedent in this town if you give way.
I don't think that's the case at all, Pat.
That's my opinion. This is America. There's a flag flying out there.
Well, I mean, if you look at Okemo right now, in Montpelier, they might not feel that way.
That's not a 10-year, that's not a 10-year.
No,
Yeah,
granted,
we're
it's 100,
talking-
but the
We're
point
talking
is,
17%, we're not talking 50%.
We're talking downstream flooding and people being affected by it already in town. But that's okay, the vote's been made.
you know,
Thank you very much, Nash.
Okay, motion to reopen public hearing. So we have a motion to reopen the public hearing?
Motion.
Do we have a second? Favor? Public hearing, Stormwater Deterra Development LLC, Bradford Street, map 15, lot 482. Stormwater permit application has been filed by Deterra Development, the property located at Bradford Street, map 15, lot 482. The project description is for 4 new single-family dwellings on a private way, Bradford Street. The stormwater drainage basin accounts for 3 previously built single-family dwellings and Bradford Street roadway improvements. The applicant is represented by Rainey Gagnon of Zenith Consulting Engineers LLC. I'll say in the document here, it says Janky Bissonnette, but you know who's actually here. Plan name is Stormwater Permit Plan dated March 8, 2023. Continued pending applicant response to town peer-reviewed comments.
So, again, for the record, Rainey Gagnon, Zenith Consulting Engineers. So again, for the benefit of the new members, I'll just give a brief overview of sort of the history of the project. I apologize, I don't know the specific timelines, but as far as the phases, if you will, of how things happen. Originally, the project was proposed to be a roadway improvement plan so that the applicant could construct 3 new homes. Part of that plan was roadway and stormwater improvements. Subsequent to that, and again, I apologize, I don't know the exact timelines, there was a rezoning of the property to the north. I'm sorry. I think this is, yeah, to the east. Apologies. Rezoning of the property to the east. So the applicant wanted to build 4 new homes on the already constructed roadway. And so that's why we're here, to get the stormwater permit for the entire project. So again, the roadway's already been built. These 3 homes have been built. And I guess GAF Engineering, who's been reviewing the project, and going back and forth with, I believe, Niles and so I guess the last issue is there's been a disagreement as to what the infiltration rate should be in this infiltration basin here. And tomorrow we have scheduled what they call a falling head test, and it's essentially just measures how fast the soils underneath can receive that water. And essentially, the results of that test will determine if this basin stays the same design or if it needs further revisions to accommodate whatever that test reveals. That's the long and short of this one. I'd be happy to answer questions. I do know that, like I said, the test is scheduled for tomorrow. And again, we're more than willing to work with GAF and to...
So Jeff Deterra was into the Board of Health, and he talked to Joe and myself, and we're...
Jeff just walked in here.
Okay, so the test is tomorrow, Joe and I are going.
Yep.
And should be all set.
Did you dig out the silt on the basin? Did you dig the silt out of the basin?
No, I'm not gonna mess with it until we design it.
What about the plastic?
We're gonna cover it.
We're gonna.
Yeah, well,
We're gonna.
yeah, well, we had a bunch of jobs going on, and we'll get it covered.
You got an approved plan there, Jeff. You have to do what the plan says.
Yeah.
I
only
mean,
cost
seeing
you
it
money.
on the eye is so much better, Jeff, than saying we're gonna keep doing it.
So, Pat, is the recommendation here that we continue this until after this test is done?
Yes, for that information.
Okay.
And Jeff will agree to continue until that information, and we'll go.
So, I'll entertain a motion to continue for further information, most likely until July 26th.
I'll make the motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
So that's continued. Motion to reopen public hearing.
Motion open.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Felter, you're back there? Andrew? Solitude? You're from Solitude?
Solitude?
No.
No, so I know where he's from. There's another explanation for that.
But he's not here from Solitude.
He's not here from Solitude.
Oh, well, so we'll reopen, so Did I just hear him?
I motion to
We have a
reopen.
second?
I second.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we reopen the public hearing for New Bedford Reservoir Lakes 1, 2, 3, and 4.
You have no choice but to vote a negative.
Yeah, because we can't continue.
Yeah.
We run that
Okay, the
otherwise.
fees are waived anyways, so it's not a hardship on anybody to make a negative determination, and maybe we get them on their game, that they're a little embarrassed to do this.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to issue a negative.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Any further discussion?
And that's for lack of information.
For lack of information. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed, abstaining? So, those of you that are here for Lake Street, we've just issued a negative. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead with Lake Street, because this person's at the end.
Yeah, so the Lake Street thing, we just voted because there's nobody here to represent them. We just issued a negative determination for their order of conditions.
So their permit's been denied. They're gonna reapply.
They'll refile, but because they weren't here to agree to continue, we didn't have a choice.
So it's over.
Right now.
For now,
Completely.
for now.
For July.
So
Time being,
So that, the abutters will have to be re-notified and all that stuff? right?
Everything. If
well,
we,
yeah,
Yeah, can all the abutters be notified? I'm in Freetown and it backs up under my cranberry bog.
there's a definition of what the abutters are.
Yeah, but it's the same water that you guys are treating that goes out.
well,
It isn't how it
again,
works,
yeah,
unfortunately.
depending on,
It-
right?
But I would advise you to sign up for
What is it?
notifications from the town's website,
Oh, okay.
and you will get an email of the agendas, and you'll be able to keep track of that stuff.
Thank you.
I already have that.
Yeah,
I would think they notify the abutters on the pond.
but the list of
period.
abutters, I
It's
went
only
through that with
100 feet or
with
something,
the
yeah.
assessor's
Yeah.
office,
Yeah.
and it's 300.
Yeah.
Why don't you try throwing some carp in there just for the hell of it? No, really.
No, I wouldn't be throwing.
The worst thing could happen is a kid might catch a big fish.
Yes. I wouldn't be throwing invasive species in.
Can we eat those carp?
I don't know, some people do, I guess.
Mm.
All right. So on to new business then. For discussion, purchases for pollinator garden. I did see Chris Garcia here, but he left. Maybe he couldn't stay. Because I know Chris was one of the people we were going to purchase from.
Yeah. So the issue we have, and Joanne brought this up, I've been thinking about it. Our budget changed. July 1st, we switched to our new money
Sure.
for this fiscal year. We had an opportunity in 2023 to spend money we hadn't spent,
Right, that's what.
and that didn't happen in time. We still have money, we have $2,500, but we can't spend $2,500.
Because we don't know.
If you want to spend half of it, if you guys want to vote to spend $1,200 on items for the pollinator gardens, and maybe make a number not to exceed $1,200.
Yeah.
And
They're gonna do fundraising.
I think the golf course wants us to do something about it.
yeah, they want us to get out of there. That's what they want.
Yeah, yeah, and just so everybody knows, Heidi and I met with Noah Dion
Yeah.
and Joe Cody, who's their troop leader, or along, and a couple of other scouts were there. So this one scout wants to rehab the pollinator garden, which is on the road that goes to the golf course. So pull out all the weeds, pull up the stone, put some fabric under it, landscape fabric, put the stone back down, maybe plant some trees. We're going to talk with Chris Garcia, who was here earlier, who teaches at Old Colony and who lives in town. We'll make benches out of logs.
So here's a good idea. Let's authorize $1,200
Yeah.
and have them submit a work plan to the commission with a supply list for approval.
Yeah, so they were asking, like we said, or I said we could cover the benches, maybe the mulch, and then the scouts would fundraise for the rest of whatever's gonna be there.
Yeah.
And it'll make that area look a whole lot nicer.
Joan, you okay with $1,200?
Sounds fun.
What did we leave? $2,500?
Sounds like a good race to me.
Did we spend that?
All of our office supplies come out of.
What did we spend last year?
Mm.
You don't know? Oh, my God.
Office.
That's probably not.
$1,200.
All right, so
I
I'll
don't think
entertain
we
a
spent
motion
anywhere near $1,200.
to
Yep, free pens.
approve up to
I
$1,200
can
for Noah Dion for the Eagle Scout project on the golf course access road.
So moved.
So moved.
And a second, okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So Pat, you said there's some.
Okay, so here's an unusual situation. You saw the emails from council about reconsidering
Yes.
Mendel Road.
Mhm.
And it came up
Oh.
It came up actually yesterday from Joanne that the NOI for Mendel Road expires before our next meeting. And an expired NOI can't be renewed or reconsidered. So this is one of those unforeseen emergency situations where we contacted New Leaf and said, if you can get here for this meeting, we can do it under that allowance in the open meeting law. So
And I think that this is also falling into the category that the solar bylaw was misinterpreted as having 2-year permit as opposed
By
to
us.
3.
Yes, yes, there's actually
By-
3 under state law.
Yeah.
When the planning board wrote the solar bylaw, they forgot to put in the limit.
Mm-hmm.
And in their mind, it was intended to be 2 years, so they wrote 2 years on the permit, but that's not what's in the bylaw. So town council sent the opinion that you omitted the date, it's 3 years. So, to me, their permit, special permit's good for 3 years.
Yeah, we should.
The commissioner could at least give him a 1-year extension. I don't know what he's gonna ask you for, but we could let him get up and give us a pitch.
Oh, looks like the floor is yours. Please approach the podium.
And I can't believe you made it here from where you called me at 5:45.
I'm lucky I didn't get pinched. We've all been there. Yeah. No, Jared Connell, I'm the Vice President of Development for New England for New Leaf Energy, and I just wanted to say I'm very grateful and appreciative that you added us to the agenda tonight and gave us a chance to discuss the project again. The project, as Mr. Hannon mentioned, that I'm here to discuss is the 251 Mendel Road solar project here in town. Short background on why I'm here is that a colleague of mine, Brandon Smith, who's one of the civil engineers at New Leaf, appeared in front of the commission, I think on your May 24th meeting, requesting an extension, and that was denied. We've subsequently requested a reconsideration, which is why I'm here. And I apologize for a bit of unorthodox presentation tonight.
And may I,
Yeah,
for the record, make a slight adjustment?
sure.
It appeared on the agenda, he was not here in time for the vote. He came in at the end of the meeting, so he
Got
was
it.
not here to make the presentation.
Okay, apologies, I wasn't here, so I didn't.
Right, I'm just,
see that.
for
Yep.
the record.
Yep. So again, yeah, just apologize for a bit of an unorthodox approach tonight. I was was made aware of this a couple of hours ago and did my best to get here before you guys adjourned. So I don't have as much of a formal presentation prepared as I would have liked to. But I'd like, but I can certainly follow up with any details that the commission may like to see. Go ahead.
Do you have the letter request that you sent? Do you have a copy of that?
I do in my email, yeah. Do you need a hard copy?
No, I can print it out and give it to the commission, but.
Okay. Yeah, so the reconsideration request was submitted by the attorney that's been working with us and representing us on this project, Gregory Sampson of Sullivan, Worcester. The main reason for the delays that we've experienced on this project, or otherwise would be under construction, were due to the utility, Eversource. I know there are a couple of projects in town that are under construction right now. I believe those were the last 2 or 3 to make it through Eversource's normal kind of process before they started forming group studies. Our projects applied for interconnection back in 2018. So when we were permitting our project in 2020 and received our permits in 2021, we certainly didn't think that we'd be standing here in 2023 not having received our agreements and placed the projects under construction yet. The long and the short of it is that the group, Eversource started forming groups of several projects in same areas. So there are several projects in Acushnet and other local towns that were all put into groups. Back in 2019, the project experienced numerous delays there. The project was marked complete in the spring of 2018 by Eversource, but only received its interconnection agreement in March of this year. So this is a project that has all of its approvals and is ready to go. The only thing standing between where we are now and entering into construction is the utility publishing their schedule for doing the upgrades that are necessary for the project to interconnect. As soon as they publish that, we will align our construction schedule. Of course, we don't want to be building something years ahead of when Eversource is going to be done with their upgrades, so we usually try to align our construction schedules when they're going to be done with their upgrades. So as soon as we learn that and can coordinate all of our subcontractor buyouts and material purchases and the like, this project would move into construction. The project, as I said now, does have an interconnection agreement as of the spring of this year. It's paid its deposit. This is fairly public information. We submitted the same thing in a letter to the planning board recently, but we've paid over $500,000 in our deposit now to the utility. And we've kept up. There hasn't been a lot of activity where we've needed to be in front of the commission or the planning board or any of the local boards here in town, but we have diligently kept up with everything else with the project that we need to make it eligible to move right into construction. All the landowner options, utility deposits, engineering. We've fully financed the project. It's ready to go, but for the publishing of the utility schedule. We've also, in the time since we've gotten our permit, have qualified it for the solar program here in Massachusetts. So it literally has everything that it needs to move into construction, but for the publishing of the upgrade schedule by Eversource.
And this is where the Girl Scout camp used to be?
That's correct. Yeah, the Greenbrier.
Yeah.
So you,
And part of what makes this an emergency is, I think the commission based their decision on the fact that the permit was, the special permit's expiring as well. After talking to council for New Leaf, and maybe even talking to yourself, if that's what I spoke to on the phone, I said, just apply for a notice of intent. You won't need to, come up with new plans and new paperwork and all things, just apply for new notice of intent, but it's in their contract that if a notice of intent lapses, they've lost their connection. And they'd lose $1 million or more that they've invested into this project. So I made that extra effort to push Darren Klein and Jeff Blake, and had a lot of contact with Gregory Sampson. So it would be unfair to have these folks lose 7 figures.
well, ultimately what's unfair is the vote was based on faulty
On bad information, yeah. But Brandon should have done time. But it was my wish that you don't do anything, because the guy's a really good guy. When I talked to Greg, I was like, look.
He's a fantastic guy, and he's a great engineer, and I know he...
I thought he was going to cry, honest to God. He was just mortified that he was late.
So what do we need to vote tonight then? Just
To extend the notice of intent, but for how long you want to extend it. So actually, we would make a motion to reconsider. There would be a motion to reconsider from the commission and have an amount of time that you want to do it. So
Yeah.
is it up to 3 years?
What, for an extension of an NOI?
Yeah. Or is it?
You can extend it once for 3 years.
I'd give them the 1 year 3 extension just because Sincarfa made a presentation to the planning board that they had a connection, but the schedule for the power company to have the infrastructure in could be as far out as 2027. They don't have the infrastructure. There was a recent TV thing about this that, I don't know, there's 8 gigawatts of power in Massachusetts, and it far exceeds what they thought they were ever going to have, and they don't have the infrastructure for it. And now they need to build the infrastructure, and the other side is they're in the business too.
The infrastructure, now that all the agreements, the studies are concluded, the upgrades are designed and known, so Eversource knows exactly what they need to build for this project and all the other ones in the group. And they haven't published that schedule for how long it's going to take to do the work, but there is, Department of Public Utilities has been heavily involved in this group study process, and they are encouraging / forcing a phased interconnection approach. So what that means is that if our project needs X amount of line work, but may not need some of the substation to work to be done for it to interconnect, they'll allow us to interconnect at the end when they're done with the line work, but not wait for everything at the substation. So when those details come out and the schedule is known for exactly what upgrades need to be installed for our project, we would complete our construction schedule, do all the buyouts, and move right into construction. I would estimate that in the, I think that's probably in the 12 to 18 month time frame. So a 3-year extension would be more than sufficient.
So if somebody makes a motion to reconsider and give a 3-year extension.
Okay, so we can do
I
that.
make a motion to reconsider.
Do we have a second? Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? It's unanimous. Okay.
Thank you very much for your
But the
time.
motion was to reconsider and extend for 3 years.
Aye.
I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Try slower.
I see nothing else on the agenda here, Pat?
Nope.
All right, so I'm going to take chairman's privilege, since this is my final meeting, to say thank you and just make it, so when I joined the commission in 2002, my fellow members were Ted Chopper, Steve Horsfall, Patty Mendonca, who later became Patty Picard, Greg Wood was the chair, and Mark Broder, and then we had an associate member named Len Alves. Since then, there's also been Carol Chongerlides, Joe Botello, Rich Gula, Kevin Dakin, Everett joined in 2010, Evelyn in 2011, Chris Green and Heidi in 2013, Paul Valenti in 2018, Ryan and Rick Pimentel in 2019. That's been, I didn't count them all up, but that's quite a few commission members. And the agent at the time when I joined was Monica Schuler, who became Monica Weldon. Monica was a college classmate of mine. And when she found out I moved to town, she called me. It's like, I need you on the commission. And Monica is now, I think, head of the nursing education department at UMass Dartmouth.
Nice. That's
Smart,
great.
smart woman.
Yeah.
We had Sarah French Storer for 1 year, Dan Herzlinger for 2, Merrill Lee in 2006, and then Patty in 2021. So, yeah, so thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And, yeah, 21
Some
years,
big shoes to
17
fill
this
right
year.
there.
But I learned a lot.
I'm sure.
And as I mentioned at the selectmen's meeting last night, I got to go to places I would have never visited otherwise. And saw
Wouldn't have the,
natural
yeah,
resources and
sure.
saw property, and most of the property owners were
Wouldn't
pretty
have
cool
that,
about having us there. Some did it begrudgingly, but, because they had to. But, yeah, good way to get, to get to know a town, and I hope
Yeah.
that the three of you, make the most of that opportunity. See those
After this
spots.
leg bite, I'm almost ready to walk away. No.
You will get to see things you wouldn't have seen. I saw the same things in Uxbridge, and I think, wow.
Yeah.
But you're also saying, why would they build something here?
Right.
I understand it, just some of the behind the scenes, and you meet some pretty interesting people too.
Yeah. Yeah. And you get to help some people.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you
Lot of
help to
different
protect the
walks of
resource,
life.
and you get to help people, and sometimes they didn't like the results of what we did, but I think we tried to be fair, and they felt heard, and we tried to stick to the wetlands protection act as best we can. And, yeah. So
Mr.
anyway,
Chairman, if I may, could I have the floor, please?
floor is granted.
First of all, thank you. I was going to take the floor from you anyway.
Okay.
Bob, tonight makes your last night with the commission. I'd like to thank you on behalf of the commission, all the citizens of Acushnet and the Commonwealth for your service to the environment. It's my understanding that you have served the town since 2002. You have chaired the commission for 17 of those years. I'm sure that those that served with you learned from you in your vast knowledge of the environment. Thank you for being a good leader and a friend. You will be missed by those that have served with you. Again, thanks for 21 years of service to the environment. And now I will ask you to say the words that made our friend Ted so dear to us.
Motion to adjourn? I need a second.
Second.
All in favor? Meeting adjourned.